Good morning, friends. Once again, I welcome you all to this e-learning platform of KTHM College. In today's session, we have a look at motives in a play A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. Motifs are recurring structures, contrasts, and literary devices that can help to develop and inform the text major themes. I will focus on text major themes, that is a contrast. The idea of contrast is the basic building block of A Midsummer Night's Dream. The entire play is constructed around groups of opposites and doubles. Nearly every characteristic presented in the play has an opposite. Helena is tall, Hermia is short, Puck plays pranks, Bottom is the victim of pranks, Titania is beautiful, Bottom is grotesque. Further, the three main groups of characters, who are developed from sources as varied as Greek mythology, English folklore, and classical literature, are designed to contrast powerfully with one another. The fairies are graceful and magical, while the craftsmen are clumsy and earthy. The craftsmen are merry, while the lovers are overly serious. Contrast serves as the defining visual characteristic of A Midsummer Night's Dream, with the play's most indelible image being that of beautiful, delicate Titania weaving flowers into the hair of the ass-headed Bottom. It seems impossible to imagine two figures less compatible with each other. The juxtaposition of extraordinary differences is the most important characteristic of the play's surreal atmosphere and is thus perhaps the play's central motive. There is no scene in which extraordinary contrast is not present. Now we'll talk about symbols in a play, A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. Symbols are objects, characters, figures, and colors used to represent abstract ideas or concepts. Theseus and Hippolyta bookend A Midsummer Night's Dream, appearing in the daylight at both the beginning and the end of the play's main action. They disappear, however, for the duration of the action, living in the middle of Act First, Scene First, and not reappearing until Act 4, as the sun is coming up to end the magical night in the forest. Shakespeare uses Theseus and Hippolyta, the ruler of Athens, and his warrior bride, to represent order and stability, to contrast with the uncertainty and instability and darkness of most of the play. Whereas an important element of the dream realm is that one is not in control of one's environment, Theseus and Hippolyta are always entirely in control of theirs. Their reappearance in the daylight of Act 4 to hear Theseus' hounds signifies the end of the dream state of the previous night and return to rationality. The love potion. This is another symbol. The love potion is made from the juice of a flower that was struck with one of Cupid's misfired arrows. It is used by the fairies to wreak romantic havoc throughout Act 2nd, 3rd, and 4. Because the meddling fairies are careless with the love potion, the situation of the young Athenian lovers becomes increasingly chaotic and confusing. Demetrius and Lysander are magically compelled to transfer their love from Hermia to Helena, and Titania is hilariously humiliated. She is magically compelled to fall deeply in love with the ass-headed Bottom. The love potion thus becomes a symbol of the unreasoning, fickle, erratic, and undeniably powerful nature of love, which can lead to inexplicable and bizarre behavior and cannot be resisted. Now we will have another symbol, that is of craftsman's play. The play within a play that takes up most of Act 5, Scene First, is used to represent in condensed form many of the important ideas and themes of the main plot. Because the craftsmen are such bumbling actors, their performance satirizes the melodramatic Athenian lovers and gives the play a purely joyful comedic ending. Pyramus and Thisbe face parental disapproval in the play within a play, just as Hermia and Lysander do. The theme of romantic confusion, enhanced by the darkness of night, is rehashed as Pyramus mistakenly believes, because of the mix-up caused by the fairies' meddling. The craftsman's play is therefore a kind of symbol for A Midsummer Night's Dream itself, a story involving powerful emotions that is made hilarious by its comical presentation. Now, these are all symbols used in a play, A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. In the next lecture, in the same session, we are going to have a look at the genre, that is, and style of a play, Midsummer Night's Dream. Now we'll talk about the genre, that is comedy, in telling the story of several sets of lovers who must overcome obstacles and misunderstandings before they are finally united in marriage. A Midsummer Night's Dream is an example of Shakespearean comedy. The play's central couples, Hermia and Lysander, and Helena and Demetrius, begin the play facing two classic obstacles of Shakespearean comedy: parental disapproval and misdirected love. Hermia's father forbids her to marry Lysander, insisting that she marry Demetrius instead. According to Athenian law, Hermia faces death or exile if she disobeys her father. Meanwhile, Helena loves Demetrius, but his love is currently directed at Hermia. These initial obstacles become confused and compounded when the couples enter the forest. The fairy Puck's mistaken enchantments result first in Lysander loving Helena, and then in both men loving Helena, a reversal of the play's opening. But by the next morning, the confusion has been resolved. Lysander's enchantment has been removed while Demetrius' enchantment remains, and the couples are, for the first time, happily balanced. The couple's final barrier is overcome when Theseus overrules Hermia's father's wishes, and the play ends as all Shakespearean comedies do, with a wedding. Like other Shakespearean comedies, Midsummer focuses on the characters' situations rather than their emotions. For example, in the play's first scene, rather than dwelling in despair because they are forbidden to be together, Hermia and Lysander focus on a solution and make a secret plan to escape. Later, the fairy king Oberon witnesses Helena pledging her devotion to Demetrius and immediately decides to intervene when Demetrius harshly rejects her. Both the lovers' decision to go into the forest and the fairy's decision to intercede in the lovers' lives create situations that confuse and trouble the lovers. However, as audience members, we are never seriously worried that the outcome will be anything but happy, because the play's fantastical situations and overwrought language distance us from the lover's pain. Secure in our knowledge that the magical mistakes will eventually be repaired and the order will be restored, we can enjoy watching the drama unfold. Now we'll talk about the style. A style of A Midsummer Night's Dream is droll and exuberant. The play features ample wordplay, underscoring the nonsensical mischief of the plot. Take the scene where Lysander and Hermia walk through the forest, preparing to rest for the night. The couple improvises on the multiple meaning of the word lie: to sleep, to have sex, and to speak an untruth. Hermia jokes with Lysander about protecting her virtue. Lie further off yet, do not lie so near. Lysander responds by clarifying and further complicating the word's meaning, noting that once they are married, then by your side no bedroom me deny. For lying so, Hermia, I do not lie. The fact that the first syllable in Lysander's name rhymes with lie only serves to heighten the humorous effect of the lovers' wordplay. Similarly, in Act 3rd, Scene 1st, Bottom says, I see their knavery. This is to make an ass of me, to fright me, if they could. Bottom is using the word ass figuratively as a synonym for fool. But the word literally applies as well, since Bottom's head has been transformed into that of donkey or ass. The ample use of wordplay gives the play a sense of clever silliness and maintains a comic mood even when the action is troubled. The audience may be so busy deciphering the many possible interpretations of the character's speech, we don't get upset by the predicaments they find themselves in. Shakespeare also uses poetic language to create melodramatic moments that both reinforce and mock the play's central theme of romantic love. Oberon speaks some of the play's most poetic passages when instructing Puck to use the love potion in Titania. Describing the flowers that blanket the bank where Titania sleeps, Oberon says, quiet, over-canopied with luscious woodbine, with sweet musk roses, and with eglantine. The irony here is that Oberon reveals his tender feelings for his queen even as he plans to manipulate and humiliate her. Oberon's other manipulations lead to some of the play's most overwrought language as the enchanted Lysander and Demetrius profess their love for Helena. Lysander vows that he would run through fire for her sake, and that Hermia, his former object of affection, now brings deepest loathing to his stomach. The lover's desperate passion creates comedy as the audience knows their feelings come from a false source, but the hyperbolic language also raises the question of whether such fickle feelings as love can indeed be true. This is all about style of A Midsummer Night's Dream. In the next lecture, we'll have look at prose versus verse, point of view, tone, foreshadowing in a play Midsummer's Night Dream by William Shakespeare. Thank you.